Here in 7.5, I'll tell you, I'm skipping a bunch of pages because I know that you can read and I know that you've already seen all of the interactions with arrays, just with, single variables. So I'm pretty confident you guys are going to be fine with that. I do want to spend just a moment here on page 410 to talk about comparing the contents of one array to the contents of another array. What you cannot do is use either the comparison operator, so the equals equals, or if, well, this is, I guess, not an either, but an extension on the previous statement, but you cannot say if, array 1 equals array 2. That is never going to return for you a true value. The reason for this is, and we do get into this, in much, much, much deeper detail. As a matter of fact, all of CIS 277 is talking about, arrays, vectors, elements, pointers, things like this. When we are using an array, what C++ wants to do is be as parsimonious. It wants to be as stingy and cheap with its overall resource contents as possible. So instead of passing by value like we see with every other type of variable when we do function calls, like we do when we do the equals equals, the comparison operator, it's comparing by value there. C++ says because every array knows its starting address in storage, because every array knows its length, how many elements there are in that array, rather than pass the values over, because we could have arrays that are, incredibly large, thousands of elements, tens of thousands of elements, millions or billions of elements, rather than the overhead that comes with that. Because remember, in an array, all of those elements have to be contiguous. So if I'm going to pass by value, pass by copies of everything, and I have a 10,000 element array, I have to have enough space for my original 10,000 element array and a copy of my 10,000 element array. And that gets to be resource expensive. To circumvent all of that, what C++ does is go, here's the address. Here's the address of my first element in the array. And that address is what C++ is comparing when I say array 1 equals array 2. Now, unless those arrays are the same, so array 1 equals array 1, that address is going to be different because C++ has to point to another contiguous area inside of storage that represents the number of elements and the size of the number of elements of the type of array that you have specified. So the comparison operator doesn't work. What we need to do instead, and again, this is on page 410, and you can see it back here behind me. Rather than do that, what we have to do is compare the elements of one array individually to the elements of the other array. So we have to compare element 0 of array 1 to element 0 of array 2. If those are equal, we can then go to compare array 1 element 1 to array 2 element 1. That gets really gross. This is why this turns up in a code sample here at the end of the chapter. So we cannot use the equals equals comparison operator here. We have to test individually. The elements of one array against the elements of the other array. And it just so happens that for loops work really, really well for this.